The year was 1908. Amidst the grandeur and sorrow, a peculiar sound pierced the air, the cries of a child. This was Puyi, the last emperor of the Qing Dynasty, a boy barely 3 years old, ascending to a throne he could barely comprehend, with the weight of the empire resting on his tiny shoulders. Puyi's life was a series of dramatic shifts in fortune. From absolute power to humiliation, he was a pawn in the hands of powerful forces. The Japanese, eager to legitimize their imperial ambitions, installed him as the puppet emperor of Manchuria, turning him into a tool of oppression. The end of World War II brought Puyi's capture by Soviet forces. His imprisonment in Siberia marked a turning point. Stripped of his titles, Puyi began a process of self-reflection, eventually embracing communist ideology and dedicating himself to atoning for his past. As Puyi cried within the Forbidden City, China teetered on the brink of chaos, grappling with poverty, famine, and foreign encroachment. The Qing Dynasty, weakened by internal strife and external pressures, was a shadow of its former self, its authority waning as discontent brewed. The opium crisis devastated China, ensnaring millions in its addictive grip and crippling the economy. The Opium Wars ended in humiliating defeats for the Qing Dynasty, forcing them to legalize the drug and cede Hong Kong to the British. As China entered the 20th century, cries for change grew louder. The Qing Dynasty seemed incapable of stemming the tide of discontent. Sun Yat-sen emerged as a leading voice for change, advocating for the overthrow of the Qing Dynasty and the establishment of a modern republican government. The Forbidden City was both Puyi's playground and his prison, isolating him from the realities of life outside its walls. For all its grandeur, Puyi lived a life devoid of warmth and companionship, surrounded by eunuchs who attended to his every need. Despite the constraints of his upbringing, Puyi was not entirely deprived of the joys of childhood, exploring the Forbidden City's hidden corners. He developed a passion for photography and Western technology, much to the consternation of court traditionalists. The arrival of Reginald Johnston provided Puyi with his first real glimpse into the world beyond the palace walls. Under Johnston's influence, Puyi began to question the rigid traditions of the Qing court and embraced new ideas. The year 1911 marked a turning point in China's history. The Xinhai Revolution ignited a popular uprising that would forever alter China's destiny. For Puyi, the revolution seemed a distant rumble, but the walls were closing in, and the tremors would soon be felt within the Forbidden City. A republic is born. The Xinhai Revolution marked the end of the Qing Dynasty. Led by Sun Yat-sen, the revolutionaries envisioned a modern republic. Sun's message resonated with millions, promising nationalism, democracy, and social justice. The Qing court faced the inevitable tide of revolution. On February 12, 1912, Puyi abdicated, ending over 2 millennia of imperial rule. The Republic of China was established with Sun Yat-sen as provisional president. The fall of the Qing dynasty signaled a new chapter in Chinese history. The emperor's new clothes. The abdication edict stripped Puyi of his throne but not his imperial title. Within the Forbidden City he remained the emperor, catered to by servants. Outside the world changed, but inside life continued as before. Puyi developed a distorted view of the world. He was taught Confucian classics and exposed to Western ideas. He was both emperor and prisoner, a mix of privilege and confinement. It was a gilded cage, but a cage nonetheless. Puyi became a symbol of a bygone era in a changing world. The Emperor's Temptation. Life in the Japanese concession of Tianjin was a strange mix of freedom and constraint for Puyi. Freed from the Forbidden City, he embraced Western fashions, new technologies, and tennis. Yet, his every move was watched by Japanese protectors. The Japanese aimed to exploit Puyi's imperial lineage. They showered him with gifts, reminding him of his lost throne. They encouraged his dreams of imperial grandeur. Manchuria, rich and strategic, was coveted by Japan. Puyi, blinded by promises, became a willing pawn. In 1932, the Japanese orchestrated a series of incidents in Manchuria, culminating in the Mukden Incident, a staged bombing of a Japanese-owned railway that served as a pretext for a full-scale invasion. The Chinese army, ill-equipped and poorly led, was quickly overrun, and within months, Japan had established control over the entire region. With Manchuria firmly under their control, the Japanese moved swiftly to legitimize their conquest. They declared the region to be an independent state, christening it Manchukuo, and installed Puyi as its emperor. The coronation ceremony, a pale imitation of the grandeur of his childhood coronation in Beijing, was a carefully stage-managed affair designed to project an image of legitimacy and popular support. In reality, Manchukuo was nothing more than a Japanese puppet state. Its government was staffed by Japanese officials, its economy controlled by Japanese corporations, and its army commanded by Japanese officers. Puyi, despite his imperial title, was little more than a figurehead, his every move dictated by his Japanese handlers. The world saw through the charade. The League of Nations, formed in the aftermath of World War I to prevent future conflicts, condemned Japan's actions and refused to recognize Manchukuo's legitimacy. But Japan, undeterred by international criticism, continued to tighten its grip on its new puppet state, exploiting its resources and using it as a base for further expansion in Asia. The early years of Puyi's reign in Manchukuo were marked by grandeur and disillusionment. He reveled in power, attending ceremonies and issuing decrees, yet he felt like a puppet, controlled by the Japanese. They maintained the facade of his authority but controlled everything. Puyi, once a ruler, was now a prisoner in his own palace. Seeds of doubt began to take root in Puyi's mind. The fall of Manchukuo in 1945 marked another dramatic chapter in Puyi's life. Captured by Soviet forces, he was taken to Siberia for 5 years of confinement. Gone were the trappings of imperial power and the illusion of authority. Puyi, once the son of heaven, was now just another prisoner. He lived in a Spartan villa with a routine of meals, walks, and interrogations. Despite his confinement, Puyi felt an unexpected sense of relief. The burdens of the throne and fear of retribution were gone. For the first time, he was free from the pressures that had shaped his life. The world was in chaos, but Puyi found peace in his Siberian exile. He reflected on his life, confronting his mistakes and expanding his mind. Section 2. The Emperor's Education. Puyi's time in Siberia was not a solitary confinement. He shared his villa with a small group of fellow prisoners, mostly former officials from Manchukuo. These men, once his subordinates, were now his equals, stripped of their titles and forced to confront their own complicity in the Japanese regime. The Soviets, ever mindful of the propaganda value of their captive, encouraged Puyi and his fellow prisoners to engage in self-criticism. They organized group discussions, showed propaganda films, and provided access to Marxist literature, all with the aim of instilling in them a new understanding of history and their place in it. Puyi, initially resistant to these attempts at ideological re-education, gradually began to see the world through a different lens. The Confucian principles that had shaped his upbringing, the emphasis on hierarchy and obedience, were challenged by the egalitarian ideals of Marxism. He began to question the legitimacy of the imperial system, to see it as a system of oppression that had benefited a privileged few at the expense of the many. The process was not without its challenges. Puyi, accustomed to a life of deference and privilege, struggled to adapt to a world where everyone was considered equal. He clashed with his fellow prisoners, his temper flaring at their perceived disrespect. Yet, through these struggles, he began to shed the layers of entitlement and arrogance that had defined his former life. Section 3. A Model Citizen. In 1950, after 5 years in Soviet custody, Puyi was returned to China. His fate was uncertain. The newly established People's Republic of China, led by Mao Zedong, was in the midst of consolidating its power and purging its enemies. Many expected Puyi, the symbol of a bygone era and a collaborator with the Japanese, to be treated harshly. To the surprise of many, Mao chose a different path. He saw in Puyi an opportunity to demonstrate the transformative power of communism, to show the world that even the most hardened class enemy could be rehabilitated and transformed into a model citizen. Puyi was sent to Fushun War Criminals Management Center, a re-education camp for former officials of the Japanese puppet regimes. Life at Fushun was a far cry from the luxury Puyi had once known. He lived in a small cell, ate simple food, and spent his days working in the fields alongside his fellow prisoners. He attended political lectures, participated in group discussions, and wrote lengthy self-criticisms, confessing his sins and embracing the principles of communism. The transformation was remarkable. The once proud emperor, accustomed to having his every whim catered to, embraced his new life with a zeal that surprised even his captors. He threw himself into his studies, eagerly absorbing Marxist ideology and denouncing his imperial past. He worked diligently in the fields, taking pride in his labor and the opportunity to contribute to the common good. Section 4. The Last Emperor, Reborn. After 9 years at Fushun, Puyi was deemed fully rehabilitated. He was granted a pardon by Mao Zedong and released from custody. He moved to Beijing, where he took a job as a gardener at the Beijing Botanical Garden, a fitting occupation for a man who had once overseen the vast gardens of the Forbidden City. Puyi embraced his new life as an ordinary citizen with a quiet dignity. He married Li Shuxian, a former nurse, and lived a modest but comfortable life. He continued to study Marxism and wrote his autobiography, From Emperor to Citizen, a candid and often self-critical account of his life that became a bestseller in China and abroad. The last emperor of China had become a citizen of the People's Republic, a living testament to the transformative power of communism. His story, once a tale of imperial grandeur and tragic downfall, had become a parable of redemption and the possibility of personal transformation. Puyi's journey from a crying child emperor to a model communist citizen is a testament to the enduring power of history and the unpredictable nature of human experience. It is a story of loss, manipulation, imprisonment, and ultimately, an unexpected kind of freedom. It is a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming forces, individuals can find the strength to change, to adapt, and to embrace new beginnings. Section 1. The Weight of the Dragon Robe. Puyi's story is a poignant reminder of the immense weight carried by those born into positions of power. He was a ruler who never asked to rule, a figurehead elevated to a position he never truly understood. His tears during that fateful coronation now seem like an unconscious prophecy of the turbulent life ahead. Throughout his life, Puyi wore many robes, the silken garments of an emperor, the Western suits of a modernizer, the military uniform of a Japanese puppet. Yet none of these truly fit. It was in the humblest of settings, the re-education camps and the botanical gardens, that Puyi finally found a sense of purpose and belonging. The boy who cried beneath the weight of the dragon robe finally found peace as a man tending to the simple beauty of nature. Section 2. A Life Beyond the Throne. While Puyi's story is unique in its historical context, it speaks to universal truths about the human condition. It highlights the enduring allure of power, the seductive whisper of what could be, and the ease with which even the most well-intentioned individuals can be manipulated by those seeking to exploit their vulnerabilities. Moreover, Puyi's journey is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, our capacity for adaptation and change, even in the face of unimaginable adversity. Stripped of everything he once held dear, he found the strength to rebuild his life, brick by brick, forging a new identity for himself in a world vastly different from the one into which he was born. In the grand tapestry of Chinese history, Puyi's reign may seem like a brief, tumultuous interlude between eras. Yet his life, in all its complexities and contradictions, serves as a valuable lens through which to view the tumultuous transformations that shaped modern China. He was both a witness to and a participant in the dismantling of an ancient system and the birth of a new order. And while his name will forever be linked to the fall of the Qing Dynasty, it is his journey from emperor to citizen that offers the most profound lessons about the enduring power of hope, resilience, and the search for meaning in a world constantly reshaping itself.